Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes Podcast. We're here with Jonathan Crawley, who's the CEO of Oops, and Joseph Hatch, who's the president of Oops. How are you guys?
Great. Doing great. Excited to be here.
And it's oops.io.
Yes, that is our website, oops.io.
And the app?
You just search Oops or Oops Returns, and you'll find us.
All right. Who came up with the name?
Truthfully, it was actually my father-in-law, super creative guy, and we threw out some really terrible names, and he came back with a bunch of good ones, and we liked Oops, in part because it encapsulates like the feeling of returning something as well as it's verbable. So our goal is to make it such that anytime someone's returning something, they just oops it, leave it on their doorstep, and we take it back.
Love it. All right, let's go back a little bit. What is the founding story of Oops? Where did the idea come from?
Sure. No, I'm happy to give this one. I mean, it came years ago. At the time I was working in venture, so I was chronically sort of thinking about new business ideas and just kind of innovation. And it was a Saturday, and I was on a returns escapade. I had 3 stops. I think I had to go to, FedEx, UPS, and Kohl's or something like that. But basically was sitting in a UPS parking lot and realized this thing's gonna suck up my Saturday. I'm gonna spend hours doing this, and was like, there really should just be like a merchant agnostic returns platform where you in the same way that you receive the package, you can just put it on the porch, press the button, and it goes away. Somebody comes and picks it up and sorts it and deals with all that sorts of stuff. So I actually took that. And I had a little notes section in my phone of different business ideas, whatever like that, and wrote merchant agnostic returns platform. And that was years ago. Kind of kissed it goodbye for a long time, and then it wasn't until recently, just end of last year, that Jonathan and I were sort of kicking around ideas and thinking about starting something, and we did, kind of landed on that idea after doing a bunch of different research and stuff like that. So
very cool. And classic kind of, it wasn't on a napkin, but it was on a notepad on your phone. And then talking to a buddy, kicking ideas around. How much research did you guys do? What did that entail before you guys felt you had landed on something?
So truthfully, Joseph always claims that it was his third best idea, and I personally fell in love with the idea pretty quickly, in part because my wife does a ton of returns, and which means I do plenty of returns on her behalf. So it's a much hated errand in my household, and for lots of reasons, I think the market about it was super interesting. So we started with really kind of unit economic level research. So we ran some pricing studies. I ended up running 4 or 5 pricing studies just to understand what are people willing to pay for a service like this? What is the appetite, kind of broadly speaking? And then we talked to probably hundreds of people, consumers and retailers and executives at retailers, to better understand everyone's, all the different stakeholders' perspectives, before really kind of committing some real time and capital behind it.
Very cool. And of all the pain points, who's feeling the most pain based on your research?
Oh, I thought you meant between the two of us. I was like, that's
a shared
funny.
pain.
No, well, it's funny because the irony of it is like, we started a company based on a pain point that we both hate doing returns, and the irony of that is, now we've both
do a lot of returns.
We've done hundreds of returns. I hate returns more than ever now. Like it's super painful, and but no, the customer that we're honing in, maybe you can talk a little bit.
Yeah, so the stakeholder that you're referencing that feels the pain point, I mean, they all feel the pain point in different ways, right? Retailers, I think it's less than 5 or 10% of items that get returned end up back on shelves. Consumers deal with the pain point from the perspective of they have to adjudicate the return, they have to package it, they have to get it back to the courier or back to the store and wait in line. So I would just say everyone has a pain point as a part like returns aren't anyone's pleasure. except for ours, I guess you could say, even though we hate it. But in all seriousness, like it's just different for every stakeholder.
Yeah. And there's probably all sorts of crazy and interesting facts about these returns. You just shared one. Very few items end up back on the shelf, which means probably not a good place where they end up. And I could venture it's a landfill. You mentioned when we were talking before, some of it actually gets burnt.
Yeah, energy recapture is a real thing. They will take a brand new sweater or a slightly used sweater that they can't sell or they don't want to resell because it's no longer in style, and they will burn it. And that's the best way that the retail industry has found to dispose of the item, which is just insane.
Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
Out of the gate.
Or they liquidate. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
A lot gets liquidated.
So it ends up in a swap meet somewhere on a crate.
Yep.
And that's probably where I would buy it 3 years after it was in style.
Because you don't return anything, which I love. There are very few of you out there.
Yeah, that is true. I've never returned anything, wouldn't even have the foggiest notion on how to do it in person or online.
You're a rare breed, my friend.
You bought it, it's yours. Figure out what to do. That's
we would be honored to do your first return. you let us know when you're ready. We'll get you taken care of.
I have been meaning to ask, does your wife do any returns on your behalf?
No.
No returns on your behalf.
No.
Wow. So if you buy something, it's yours.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Till death do you part.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's commitment.
Yeah. I guess I just have empathy for the stores, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as you should.
Either that or you just have a really big bonfire every week. Put it out in the backyard or something.
No, I actually, there's a drink holder that we've had here in the office for years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was decided that it couldn't be returned and it was put in the garbage, and that it is now in my office and it will be used for something else. So a big part of it is like the environment, right? Like I can't stand sending something back 4 or 5 times because it didn't fit right.
Yeah.
And I guess ultimately it's Mother Nature that pays that one. So
yeah.
I mean, I 100% hear you, and I think that there are elements of what we do that is going to increase return rates, which for us is one of the reasons why our company values includes like build for sustainability, because we think there's a huge opportunity for that. But the one thing, our very first customer was an old woman who had just broken her femur. I think I mentioned this to you. And I mean, she couldn't shop in store. She had to shop online. She was, I mean, essentially on Social Security, and she had a bunch of stuff to return. And that's like a very real use case that we see fairly often of people who just, it's a real pain, or they physically cannot do a return. So we're solving a critical need for those people.
Very cool.
Yeah, well, I was going to add on the pain point, sustainability, and like, you know, whose pain point really is this? Like, from a consumer angle, people are they trade dollars for an item, right? And then when something goes back, you know, there's an exchange, and those dollars represents somebody's time. That represents, both of us came from digital health backgrounds before this, and you know, in healthcare, number one SDOH is dollars in your bank account. So that represents your time, that represents your health, et cetera, you know. And so, you know, we are facilitating, hopefully a better retail experience for the customer, but also an exchange back for people's time with, and that's really kind of like our, you know, one of the big ideas is we're giving people time back with people that they love to, you know, to be able to do the things that they love. So,
yeah. And I think that's the one thing you can't buy, right? According to all the quotes and smart people on their deathbed.
That's right. Sure. That's right.
Buy that time back. All right. So even a Luddite like me can see the value for both the retailer and the consumer, right? It could be a sweater from any type of store, and it doesn't matter. You guys will pick it up, and that's where the magic happens with you guys.
Yeah, so we're merchant agnostic. So we'll take it back to a store. We'll take it back, or we'll ship it back on your behalf. We've we're only operating in Salt Lake City right now, but we've done returns in Chicago and other cities on behalf of customers who have shopped in other cities and then come back, and then we facilitate it for them. We really try and provide a white glove experience for those consumers, and yeah, or really their assistants rather than just necessarily like a courier.
Yeah. And I can imagine, I'll use my wife as an example, how happy she would be with that white glove experience, right?
Yeah.
And I would assume the happy customers will just tell their friends. So you get a lot of free marketing with good customer service.
Yeah, we have a lot of customers ask for referral codes, a lot of them.
Very
For
cool.
sure. Yeah, no, we've definitely found people, it's a new idea. So, people are definitely a little bit, maybe scared to try us. By the way, we insure everything. So you don't have to be scared to try us.
Yeah, up to $1,000 of insurance.
We'll cover
pickup.
people. But once they try us, people rave about us. They generally stick with us, and they'll make more returns through us after they've tried us. And then we've definitely had people share it around and sort of rave about us once they've tried us.
Yeah. I think it's about 30% of our new customers come from word of mouth.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So we've been talking about sweaters. That's pretty easy. Don't weigh a lot. But I can imagine the things people return run the gamut from a sweater to what's the craziest so far?
Yeah, no, I mean, Jonathan looks at me. We've had some, we've definitely had some Hall of Famers. Right now we're kind of, we haven't gated it super strict or anything like that, and we're just sort of seeing what comes, handling what comes through our door. Earlier today, we literally dealt with somebody that was trying to return a 14-foot swimming pool from their backyard, and so I mean, that's one example. We also, I could tell you a funny story about, sort of at the risk of somebody
hearing that story,
hearing their own story, but I did mail somebody's dad's remains through UPS the other day, and
that was not a return, to be clear. It wasn't returning to heaven or hell.
We were, we were helping somebody with a shipment, and oh my gosh, it was
So human remains to used pools to bed frames to commercial ice makers, everything big to everything small. I mean, kind of the full gamut we've seen.
Yeah, it's funny. We've had customers where they're like, oh, I want to be there on the doorstep, which, by the way, the way our service works is you can essentially just take your item, put it on the porch. You don't have to package it or label it. You can just digitally upload the label. We'll handle all that. And but people will be worried about that, or people will be worried, and they'll want to give us instructions and tell us like, oh well, Amazon, they have these QR code things, and it's just funny to us because we're like, you have no idea what we've seen. We've called almost every brand to try and work out returns on behalf of customers. We've dealt with stuff that didn't have enough shipping postage. We've dealt with, just A to Z. Surely we haven't seen it all, but we've,
started to see a lot.
Seen a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So that sounds painful.
Sure.
So if you show up and there's a box emanating like green rays and it's returned to Los Alamos National Laboratory, you're still riding on that one, right?
We're riding it. Yeah.
All right.
Is this your return?
Mostly Joseph.
Is this your return that you've got? You're trying
That's
to get
the
us?
one return. It's like, what is this nuclear radiation?
I don't know if we can help you with that.
So it sounds like a lot of behind the scenes, like partnership and, relationships with these retailers to figure out what's best for them.
Yeah.
Ultimately make it easier for the customer, because once you guys leave, the customer probably is like, sweet.
Yeah, no, it's a weight
done.
off their shoulders.
Yeah.
Our goal is to become like an Instacart or a DoorDash, where it's a tech-enabled service. So we have a pretty amazing product and dev team that's helping with that. And we're scaling quickly. So by no means do we have a partnership with Walmart yet, but fingers crossed we get there.
Yeah. And so that brings up the question, why doesn't Amazon do this already, as an example?
Amazon reverse logistics or first mile reverse logistics in particular are very, very messy. So last mile is where Instacart plays. It's where DoorDash plays. It's where Uber Eats, like a lot of players sit there. And the beauty of that is you have a fairly controlled parcel or item that's coming into the system, and then it's just going from point A to point B, and you can create a dense route and then deliver the item. For us, we have a kind of an unknown set of items on any given route that are unpackaged, may not have labels on them, like could be half opened cereal boxes, like all kinds of things that then we have to identify, pack, print labels, and then distribute back out to whatever stores or couriers that they are going to. So the short answer as to why Amazon's not doing it is it's ridiculously messy. Do I think Amazon will do this in the future? Probably. But I hope they do it in partnership with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if you just look at like a van and think about outfitting, a van for inbound versus outbound, or a warehouse, like any part of the infrastructure, once you do it enough and deal with the stuff that we've dealt with, it almost becomes laughable thinking about like mixing
Inbound and outbound.
Mixing the two and putting them right side by side. So the other thing too to mention that's important is like all the legacy couriers, you can schedule a pickup. Maybe you probably didn't know this because you haven't done any returns, but like you can schedule a pickup with UPS, you can schedule a pickup with USPS, et cetera. But what we're hoping, like for the consumer, we just want one point. We want a single point where like you can make all your returns go away from the same spot, and it all just gets sucked up into the same system and then processed. And you don't have to download 5 apps. You don't have to deal with the legacy technology. I don't know the last time you signed into your FedEx account, but
Never.
I mean, actually, a great example of this is one of our engineers today was mentioning he ordered a whole bunch of shoes for his son from 5 different retailers, and he has to go through 5 different processes to get return labels and then go to potentially 3 or 4 different locations to process all of those returns, even though he's just trying to find one pair of shoes for his son. It's really hard. So, we're trying to take away that pain point by being omnichannel and being kind of a single throat to choke for consumers, where we can totally remove that job to be done.
Single throat to choke. I like that one.
Yeah, that's it's actually a Chris Klompism.
There you go. I like it. That's straight into the point. And how do you guys make money? What's the business model?
So we charge consumers $15 a month for unlimited pickups, or $6 for their first pickup and $2 for every additional pickup beyond that. And that's the model. We see the vast majority of consumers or of our customers use us on a subscription basis, because the average person returns about 3 times a month. Average person, not you. Average person, which inherently just means that you're better off with subscription, as well as it reduces kind of that friction point of people saying like, do I want to pay for this one thing? So we try and optimize our flows to get people to subscribe, which is about 90+% of our consumers.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It probably makes the accounting department a lot happier and the CFO a lot happier.
Considering you're looking at them, yes, it does make us a lot happier. Finance team is very lean.
Which leads to that question. You guys are wearing a lot of hats. Before we turn the mics on, you guys are mentioning that you will do returns. You've got a couple of vans. I saw one of them.
Yep.
And it sounds like you're doing the accounting, the partnerships, the relationships, the fundraising, all of that. How did you guys, as the founding team, divide up responsibilities?
Sure. No, it's a good question. I mean, we're very much so still dividing responsibilities. I mean, Jonathan's our CEO. He's done a great job at that. Right now, I mean, kind of our playbook is we're here in Salt Lake. We're figuring out the go-to-market strategy. We're very much so both involved in sort of all of the areas of business. So it's wearing a lot of hats, but we're definitely looking forward to the day where we can start to kind of split off business functions and hire folks to handle different
to specialize. Yeah, I mean we hired specialists for the 2 probably most important functions. Our director of product used to run returns for Amazon, and then our director of marketing has a great e-commerce background, so acquiring customers digitally, and then our engineering team, who are all fantastic, and then the two generalists that are sitting on the side of the table, we just handle everything else effectively.
Yeah.
It's
it's funny too. I mean, I came from venture, so I was investing in, and I always heard kind of from startup founders that like, oh, you do everything. You're the janitor, you're the EA, you're everything, and it's every bit's true. Like, there's nobody else. If you don't get it done, nobody else gets it done.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Single throat choke.
You're gonna like that.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you've landed on a cool business model. You're building out the team. You guys have also raised some money.
Yeah.
What was that process like? What are some bits of information you can pass on to the next group of entrepreneurs that will do that? And what did you ultimately learn through the process?
So we raised $5 million from Peterson, Epic, Palion, or some of the local funds, and then Maverick and Village Global out in the Bay. And it was the vast majority of those were just connections that I had from Collect Medical, where I was the CFO, and we had a successful run for 4 years, and then sold for a great outcome, as a number of people know. And the process really came down to us defining the market, helping our investors understand the unit economics, which, as I mentioned, was the first question that we wanted to understand, and the potential for a really big outcome. I mean, venture investors, of course, are swinging for the fences. They try to swing for the fences as much as they can, and this is definitely one of those bets. Our business will either work at a pretty large scale, or it's not going to work. But if we do win at a large scale, then it's a great outcome for every early stage investor that participated. So in terms of advice for kind of future entrepreneurs, I think understanding the market dynamics really as best as you can, and understanding what the future state looks like, and finding a kind of a big meaty problem to go after. But Joseph, what would you say?
Yeah, no, I mean, we intentionally came at, like a lot of people when they start a company, they don't really come at it from this lens. It might just be something that they're interested in. And, like I mentioned, kind of the idea pad, there's 1,000 ideas that don't make it to the pad, and then, the pad whittles down. And it really came from the lens of value creation and markets and timing. Like we both knew we wanted to chase something that was a big idea and a big market, and something that we thought, the timing might be right for. And so we very much so kind of selected the idea based on a venture mindset of we want something that's a plausible big opportunity that we think we can go execute on. And so, I mean, that's part of it. The other part of it too is we both come from a background. Jonathan helped raise money at his prior work, and then I invested in a number of startups at my prior job, and so we were really familiar with kind of the venture ecosystem and how it works and those types of things. I think if somebody was not, you would do really well to partner hard with somebody that knows the game that you're playing, and sort of how to position yourself and who to talk to and all those types of things.
Yeah. And you guys kind of had an advantage that you've played the game before and you've been on both sides. That's still school of hard knocks, right? You had to arrive at that point.
Very much so.
And I've been in pitches with a lot of the folks that you've mentioned, and every once in a while they'll cock their head back or make eye contact, and they'll start to pontificate on who's going to buy this PowerPoint in a dream, right? Has that happened with you guys? Has there been other people like, oh yeah, you guys get to this point, you'll probably be acquired, and or are people thinking that far ahead?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely one of the questions that all of our investors discussed with us, and I think the short answer is by being retailer agnostic or omnichannel in nature, it's fairly unlikely that Amazon or a Walmart would buy us, or Target. Like Target recently acquired a similar last mile delivery company. Um, Couriers like the FedEx or the UPSs of the world. This is very different from their business model. It's from the perspective of like it's consumer facing, kind of higher touch, and touching a part of the value stream, like creation stream, that they are really 2 steps away from. I think if there's anyone to acquire us, it would probably be a DoorDash or like a UPS. But our default plan is just to go public at scale.
Very cool. All right, so you're in it to win it now. You're picking up
In it to win it.
pools and
Exactly.
and doing the pro formas, all of that. And so as you guys think through new markets, new products, new ideas, how do you guys factor those in with your current bandwidth? When do you decide to pull the trigger? I know, Chris Klomp likes OKRs. How do you guys do it from a strategic point of view?
So we run the business against OKRs. We only launched less than 3 months ago here in Salt Lake. So talking about new products, we'd definitely be ahead of our skis. And in terms of talking about new markets, as Joseph mentioned, like we are focused on Salt Lake City to figure out exactly what works and what doesn't. And undoubtedly we will expand. Our goal is to be nationwide within a reasonable time frame. But the OKRs is really the framework. We set them on a monthly basis and then hold each other accountable on a weekly basis. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. If you didn't have data and OKRs and supercomputers and all of that, if you just had to go with your brains, what do you think would be a zip code that has a lot of customers for Oops? Is it upper middle class? Is it 90210? Is it Manhattan? Or is it target rich environment?
Sure. No, I've been surprised. We sort of, thought, and, you asked us earlier about consumer research, and we did a number of different studies kind of up front. And we were both surprised about how much income does not affect folks' willingness to pay for a service like this. I wouldn't say this is upper class product. I wouldn't say it's definitively one or the other. We have as we've been doing pickups. I think we've seen things tilt more suburban. We tend to not be downtown as much as we're kind of out in the suburbs, and so and then it's definitely not. It's definitely not a wealthy person's product, but we definitely have. We've picked up packages from the largest homes and then from multifamily single room units too. So it really is kind of actually surprising just how and it speaks to the problem, right? It's pretty ubiquitous, and my guess is folks with money hate doing returns as much as folks on the other end. And so
yeah,
it's been interesting.
Yeah, I think the consumer behavior that's the highest predictor of someone being willing to be an early adopter, because we're certainly in the early adopter phase for our product and service, is their value of convenience and their how busy they are, and inherently where we are at in Utah, what that tends to be correlated with are moms or working parents.
Yeah. Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
All right. So if you don't know the answer, this is fine. But at some point, there needs to be triggers on a spreadsheet or somewhere that you get your next truck or your next van,
yeah.
Right? How do you guys kind of forecast that out where you're confident?
You think we are way more sophisticated than we are, my friend. I think we've both done a lot of financial modeling.
When yeah, exactly. We've got AI. It's AI by it. No, I'm just kidding. that was my prior job. Everything's AI, right? No.
Yeah, no. I mean, the short answer is it's whenever our other 2 trucks are absolutely full every single day, And I mean, it's the model with trucks is in part for us to just gain brand awareness, for us to handle larger size items. Whether or not vans will be kind of the long-term option or not, I don't know. But I think the one thing that we do know is that this is a pain point consumers are feel, and acquiring customers is something that we're actively working on and getting a lot better at. And as we are kind of gaining momentum and gaining scale here, then every assumption that we made 2 months ago, I'm sure will go out the door and be revisited from kind of top to bottom.
Yeah, our drivers tell us we need more labor before our spreadsheets do. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly.
Yeah. It's a lot harder to pick up a big pool than type in some numbers on a spreadsheet. So.
Yes.
All right. So, doing well in Salt Lake City. You've got like a pretty good idea of the customer segment who's liking it. What are some surprises that you guys thought we got this dialed in and you were just way off based on the market dynamics?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been a little bit surprised on what comes through the door. So we're offering both in-store returns and online returns. And if you were to just sort of, top to bottom, take retail and look at like who, retail dollars out the door, Walmart's a huge name. We've actually been surprised at, the number of like Walmart returns, for example, versus the number of Target returns. We see a lot more Target returns than we do Walmart returns. So
and by a lot, it's like 5x more.
Oh,
like it's dramatically different.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's probably, there's reasons we could guess on why that, maybe
Sure.
their target consumer or whatever is a little bit different. But I think that's been, one thing that's been surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A data scientist would have a lot of fun in a couple of years with
all of our data.
With all of your data.
Yeah. I mean, truthfully, it's really interesting from the perspective of, and this is something that, who knows whether or not we'll end up building to something like this, but like no household has a complete record of everything they've purchased at an itemized level. You have like transaction level. So like, I bought $42 worth of items at Cabela's, but you don't know exactly what you bought. And what we are seeing is exactly what people have bought and returned, and kind of regardless of where they purchased it from. So that, to your point, that data set is really interesting. And I think there are some things that we can and probably will do in the future to make it a better customer experience by pulling in the rest of the data that what people are purchasing.
Yeah. Another thing that's funny that's kind of surprised me is like, and maybe you could have guessed this from the beginning, but consumers are very different in their return habits. I mean, there's you on the one end that's never returned anything. We, without mentioning customer, we did have a customer who within 30 days made, returned over 100 items.
100 items in less than 30 days.
So, and then we've got some customers that really button up their packages and take care, and they're unused and they're like, really put together, and they're kind of sheepish about returning anything. And then we've got other customers that like, they don't even care. They've used it, like they've used it. It's like worn, worn to rubbish. And then it's like, oh, take this. And, we're kind of there trying to return something. And it's like, oh my gosh, people are shameless. This is crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, to just further answer your question of like, what's something that surprised us or that we've learned is like the emotions of returns are very different kind of person to person. And that plays itself out in the return behavior of like, they are embarrassed to do a return, or they just don't do returns. Or they do 100 returns a month. Like it's and not something that you ever talk to your mother-in-law about, or your cousin about, or your friend about. Like, what's your return behavior? You may see like a tiny bit of it, but it's pretty interesting to understand what people are willing to return and what they're not.
Very interesting. Yeah, you might talk to your therapist if you're returning 100 items in 30 days.
We hope hope that is not persistent forever, but it does appear to be a trend for this particular customer.
All right, last question. If my math is right, you guys have not gone through the holiday season, right?
Yeah, no. We launched 3 months ago, so no. Holiday season's going to be fun. Lots of fun.
And so that would be like, well, fun in your world, I guess, but like January, February,
January
You're expecting
really.
some stuff.
Yeah, most return windows end January 30th.
Okay.
Or 31st. So yeah, our expectation is that January will be fairly exciting.
Yeah, I can't remember what the stat is, but it's a decent actually like percentage of all return volume happens there in January.
Yeah, 2/3 of consumers do a return during the holiday season, of like American consumers, and the vast majority of those during the holiday season happen after January 1st. That's like I'll do those returns after I'm done skiing.
Yeah. Well, very cool. Color me impressed. I think the journey you guys are on is very, very cool. And I think the problem you're solving is huge. And kudos to you guys for tackling it. Thoroughly
Thanks.
enjoying it. Look forward to having you guys on again in maybe February.
Yeah,
Or
that'd be
March,
great.
we can see.
Let's
just-
have a follow up.
I just look forward to doing your first return. I hope we better have done your first return.
You
before-
obviously will. I don't want to do you dirty though. Like it'll just be vanilla and bland.
Oh, trust me, you won't be our worst. I can virtually guarantee you that. So
All right.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, it'll probably be duck decoys would be my guess. So
great.
there you
Great. Well,
that's easy.
very easy.
go. Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thanks.